South County Connector making it on the tweet board there. That's something definitely may come up in some capacity tonight, definitely coming up next week when we expand this transit conversation. For now, let's go back and talk more about economic growth and public transportation. I'll do some introductions, starting with John Lenga from Metro. Thanks, yes, John, for being here. We've talked about your system all night, so it's about time we got you at the table.
Thank you.
Also with us, Paul Hubman, East-West Gateway. And welcome back to the show, Frank DeGraff, who blogs extensively on this, Count on Downtown. Okay, so convince me that transit is an economic driver. Is that a possible sell you can make here?
I think it very much is, and there's some examples in St. Louis. You've got the Emerson Park development in East St. Louis, a fantastic housing product. You've got the Brentwood Meridian product out at our Brentwood station at Hanley. You also then have the new development coming on at Rock Road that you talked about at the last segment. And then coming up is also the Cortex development. That right now one of the functions they want is they want a new transit station as part of the key part of their 187-acre development there just east of BJC.
Yeah, I was going to say, for those who don't know, Cortex is not far from the studios here, down off of Forest Park Parkway, exactly, kind of near Boyle, and just not too far from Kings Highway.
Exactly.
But go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, and it's attracting world-class development in biosciences, research, et cetera, and one of the key things they do want is a transit station. So right now there's a lot of studies going on just for that, and it's not, to me, it's a if, as, when, as that occurs. I think that gives us, frankly, a TOD in a petri dish. It gives us something on an existing alignment to develop a TOD around with a new station. It's fantastic, the development they're attracting, and the type of companies they're attracting, they want that transit.
That's a net positive, you're convinced, when we talk about the tax dollars that go in to do something like that?
I think it's extremely net positive, yes.
On Twitter, people are saying they want a little more short-term results, maybe. They appreciate the studies, but they want some action.
Well, I think there are some things. I mean, as far as development occurring, you need probably three things to make a good TOD. You need a large tract of land that's unencumbered. You need a developer with staying power that can carry a project through multi-phases. And then you need a piece of property in a part of town that there's a market for it. If you have all three of those, you've got a very good shot of putting a good TOD together.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay.
Well, we're talking about the economic impact. Is it going to attract? We've heard this earlier in the show.
So I think that as an economic driver, I think transportation is an economic driver. Access to land, transit is a component of that. And if you go back and look at the 1903 trolley lines or streetcar map of St. Louis, it was hard to be further than 2 blocks from transit. But if you look at when the neighborhoods actually developed, a huge portion of that was after that. So the network was already in place, and then the neighborhoods grew up around it. So as an economic driver, as an ingredient, a key ingredient, then yes, absolutely.
And in a little more indirect way, it's also, it attracts young people. Young people don't use public transport because they need it or because they're dependent on it. They use it because they choose to use it. They want to use it. So if you have a world-class public transportation system, you will attract world-class young people and a great workforce, and that's exactly what global companies are looking for nowadays.
Speaking of choices, on Twitter, folks are telling us we made our choice, 50 years ago or so. We went with the car. We've talked about that gap earlier in the show tonight. You talked about just not too far from a trolley stop in 1903. Is it too far gone to redirect? Should we just focus on making the car experience better?
I don't know if it's too far gone or not, but just by way of example, since 2011, there's been development within half a mile of our 37 stations throughout the region that's either under construction, committed, or completed, that equals out to $1.6 billion in brand new investment in less than about 2.5 years. So whether or not we're too far gone for the car or mass transit, I don't know that answer, but certainly the market is responding to the areas near the mass transit line.
Yeah, I don't think we can be romantic about pre-car, pre-auto. I think the car is here to stay, and I think our development patterns, post-war certainly reflect that. I think what it does is it alters the strategy of transit serving those areas. It's more diffuse, it's not dense, and so you're looking at people that are, it's not a one-ride seat. You're driving to a station, someone's dropping you off, or you have connections that you then have to make to get to work or wherever you're going.
And the pattern is reversed. You see people moving back to the urban cores, so the density is increasing. You see that worldwide. Actually, every month, 1 million people move from rural areas into cities. And in 1950, there were 30% of the people lived in urban cities. In 2050, that's going to be 70%. That's going to be more people than live on Earth right now. So all cities will be growing. They will become denser, which means we can go back to more public transport.
Also, speaking of the future, we talked about the millennials more than a few times tonight. Something else that they like to talk about is the environment. Is there an environmental component we're missing here tonight? That's what we're hearing on the Twitter.
I think that's a key component, and the millennials are, I mean, right in front of us, it's changing. And their consumer behavior patterns. I mean, 10 years ago, the demographic of 18 to 24 drove 10,300 miles on an average. That's down to 7,900 miles on an average. That's a huge drop in 10 years. 10 years ago, that same demographic, 64% of those folks routinely drove. That's down to 46% for 18 and unders. And finally, for folks 18 to 24 years old, 2 years ago, 46% would rather have internet access than a car. That's a whole nother type of mindset, whole nother type of consumer pattern. And back to the sustainability, I think it's a key component of it.
All right, we'll leave it there for right now.